everyone. Here we are, another episode before the big finale. Today we are talking about the Enablement Manager. Ashton, it's our title time.
We're talking about my job. This is exciting. And yours.
Yes, yeah. I'm here. Let's do it.
I can't believe we're almost done. It's crazy.
So many roles, fluid but yet not, and where it fits and where it does not. So yeah, really, really fun. Yeah, let's jump in. Let's go straight into the manager role.
Clocks are ticking all the time.
Welcome. Here we are. Like I said, second to last episode. We're gonna have to find another topic to start researching and doing on these. I'm gonna have to change it from Matt chats to Ashton chats.
Yeah, our shared talk show. We just need to get on primetime TV. That was the goal last time, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh, love it. Yeah, so let's dive into the manager role. Our positions. This should be somewhat easy, I think. I hope. Let's hear from you. Let's jump in. What is exactly our manager role look like?
Yeah, so I'll say this, I want to pay homage to my job search when I was looking for this role, is that an enablement manager, usually a sales enablement manager, was the roles I saw the absolute most. And they were often the first hire at a company.
Yes.
And so it was kind of this hybrid of all of the roles we've talked about because you're a team of one. And I just want to take a quick moment to shout out anybody, regardless of title, who is a team of one, because you are all of these roles at the same time, and bless. Yes. Just bless.
I will say, when I first started talking to people on my podcasts, the first person I interviewed was a team of one, and I literally looked at them and was like, there is no way you do all of this just by yourself. You must be a superhuman, because it's unreal. It's so crazy. So yes, mad props to all single-handed one-person teams.
Yeah. But I guess when we're talking about organizational structure, where there is more than one person and you have a sales enablement manager, to me, the real shift here is the ownership of the metrics. So I am accountable to those business outcomes in a way that I have to report back, right? I'm hired based on true sales, at the time, sales outcomes. So it was to decrease ramp, to revitalize our playbooks, to really help with career pathing across the various teams, and to instill training and go-to-market ramp. I was to, increase efficiency and effectiveness and have measurable outcomes for that. As a first hire, building the data systems and how we're going to track that and partnership with other teams was part of that job. But I think the real change here is that you're really functioning at both the strategic level and the execution level.
Yeah, 100%. I think this role, I want to say almost more than others, is that very big, Rosetta Stone type-esque and collaboration job, because you're really divvying up between different roles. You're talking not only with the sales managers, the sales team, your team, if you have a team, the marketing team, the product team, finance team, people ops. I mean, you're literally going around to everybody to find the strategies that you're going to need for the upcoming year, especially with all of your initiatives. And especially when it comes down to your data team, how do you transcribe what your leaders actually want to where you can perform, execute, and then have your data team reflect those results for you as well too. So
100%.
It's huge.
You don't ever move away from building an enablement.
No.
I think that's pretty important for anyone starting out. There's no time where I'm not going to have to build a course or, roll up my sleeves. I don't foresee that in any role where, sometimes it just happens and you got to get stuff done and you'll have to do it. But depending on the size of your company, I'd say. But at the manager level, I have to manage multiple projects, just like you would, in another way, but I'm also overseeing other people's projects. I'm spending a lot more of my time cross-functionally coordinating other people and orchestrating a lot of stuff to get things built. And it's a marked difference where I would say that even now, when I was a team of one, I had to divide my time between spending time building this one thing at a time, maybe two things at a time.
Right.
Now at this level, I'm thinking about strategically, how does each of these business units need to grow? How do I have to hire in the future? What processes while I'm here doing do I have to think about? Is this someone else's career that I should be building, and really making an ask for more resources? You're really kind of building out your function and process in a more forward thinking way. So I'd say our roles leading up before, not that you can't be future thinking in these, that's not the point, but your responsibility isn't to be. Your responsibility is to solve for the problem in front of you. And I'm going to say at the manager level and director level, you're solving for those and the problems of tomorrow. So you're really trying to future proof and scale that enablement, or anticipate change and change management in your organization.
Yeah, I definitely say this is more of one of those proactive roles. I know we've talked about that in a few of the others, where like, especially on that specialist, like we want to try to be proactive, but a lot of the time you're doing some reactive work.
Yeah.
I think this is one of those roles where proactive should always outweigh your reactive thinking. Wow.
For sure.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the graduation from project to program.
Boom.
There are some things that are projects and they'll always be, but once you have a strategy, it becomes part of a program. And as a manager, you're managing that entire program, not the single projects and things that you're solving along the way. And I think of that when you think of onboarding, right?
Yeah.
If you're a lead, you might be navigating a couple sections of it. You might own, the sales onboarding, or you might own a piece of this training, and you're building each of those pieces and you're thinking about them quite individually. And at the manager level, I have to think holistically about that whole program and how it fits into the ongoing enablement program and the go-to-market programs and manager enablement, which is actually probably something that is also unique to the manager role. I think manager enablement, just because it's easier, you're more adjacent than you are, shooting up, but right. Manager enablement becomes a pretty big piece here as well.
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to skip the where does it fit, because we kind of talked about that already. Like, how does this lay? A team of one, team of many? What all? Yeah, we know where that is. We know how fluid a manager position can actually look like, especially in this space, and especially like the 10-year level of the company and their enablement team that they already have. So let's jump on to right now. What is the skill set and experiences that we're looking for? How did you and I get into these jobs based off of our experience?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many things, right? I'm always going to say this. It really depends on what stage of growth and what stage that company is at and the challenge in front of you with all of these jobs. What is the company's goal for the next year? How do they plan to grow? How are they, an organization that's trying to reboot from having a tough year? Are they an organization that's scaling quickly? Your job's going to look very different at those different types of organizations. At the time that I was interviewing, I was looking for scaling organizations, and I was going to be a team of one. And so the skill sets that I needed were really understanding adult learning theory in depth, and having done it a lot, where it's easy to spin up something and understand the difference of what school versus adult school, the ability to really facilitate and have that executive presence. Similarly in the lead role, right, we talked about what that next role is. That executive presence is table stakes in this role, right? There's no one coaching you on how to present to your directors at this stage or present back to those managers on how you help them. You need to come knowing how to do that, and how to facilitate engaging training and track the results. So I would say the skill set shift here is not only you understand enablement, but you understand how to track the success of each of those enablement activities and report back to the executives about what they care about in this kind of web of stuff you're doing. And so you're managing the chaos as well as really presenting out that you're impact focused. Things like a QBR come to mind as if my whole team doesn't do them, that's okay, but I definitely have to do one.
Right. Spot on. And people take a look at this. I mean, I will definitely say one of our colleagues, I never saw the importance of an enablement QBR until I talked to one of our colleagues. And I know she's designed this phenomenal enablement QBR template for enablement teams. So if you get a chance, check it out. Whitney, I'm plugging you.
Yeah.
Reach out to her. She's got this down. Sorry, queen of QBRs.
I'm going to plug Whitney as well. Whitney is who helped me build my QBR. So,
boom. So
sure. But I guess I think of it this way, is that at the lead role, right, you're an executor. You're hired for kind of a specific set of skills with the hope to grow. At a managerial role, you're hired as a consultant. And yes, we say that everyone in enablement is a consultant, but you are truly a consultant, especially if you're coming in as a team of one. But as a manager, you have to be responsible for so many outcomes that you have to know how to quickly diagnose teams, quickly get to like, what are the key 3 things I can do for you that are from buy-in perspective and from impact, align with the business stakeholders, because if you miss goal, you will not be there anymore. And really identify the root of the problem. In some ways, you're also charting your own path. I think in most roles, right, your director creates the vision and the manager kind of makes a plan with that vision and is responsible for holding everyone and helping everyone execute on that vision. But in enablement, I think it's really murky because sometimes you're hired as the first person where that vision is your vision. Or where you're hired in a role like in a manager, you're a little bit junior, but if you're the only person, you are also responsible for articulating the vision. So I'm going to say that like this role has interesting expectations where you're required to be at a really high level to execute as a manager, because you might be a team of one, because you might be a first hire, because maybe you're with people who don't understand enablement. And so this advocacy level exists where very few people hire a lead or a specialist as a first hire. They often hire a manager. So you just have to have a lot of knowledge of what good could look like and how to diagnose that organization.
Especially when you're talking about like, what does good look like? You're also looking about what does good look like for your team as you build that out too. And that's the biggest thing too, is people want to see, we've talked a lot about scale and what that looks like, but how does all of that work and scale when you have to build out your own team, especially as a team of one?
Yeah.
So.
I always want to touch on this where it's funny. I was trying to build out like core competencies for enablement the other week, and it was quite difficult because it's just something that like, you can be an amazing facilitator. You can be an incredible learning designer. You can, run engaging training. You can be the voice of the people and get along with everyone. But that a great enabler, it does not make. And so what are those other things, right, that I was trying to articulate? And I think that the other things or the soft things that are super important is a great enablement manager strategically understands who needs to be involved to move things forward, is really great at not just project management, but buy-in, influence, and getting to the root of the problem early so that they can execute quickly. They can often see things clearly, right? Make simple of a problem that everyone might be chaotic about. They can see the root rather quickly. They know how to execute on all of those things. So they're able to guide the execution of multiple things at once and really help other people learn and grow. And they often have to be pretty decent coaches, because manager enablement is not one that managers usually ask for. And enablement of their team, if you have new managers who are scared, is also not something that everyone is not resistant to. So there's a heavy amount of kind of negotiation and buy-in and empathy, but also convincing people and persuasion and sales truly that goes into that job that I think we don't talk about or is never on a job description. You got to know how to sell salespeople pretty well to be a sales enablement manager.
Yes, 100%. There's always a show that comes to mind, and it's always kind of a little embarrassing because I watched the show, but there's one show that always comes to mind. And if you think about it, a lot of the context of what happens, minus like obviously the boring storylines that go along with it, but the show Scandal with, oh my God, I forgot her name now. She's a rock star. Anyways, it's a good show because she really does focus a lot on utilizing everybody's strengths, but selling the story, the vision, and making sure that the problems actually get executed 110%. And it's always great for me. I mean, one, who doesn't like a strong, powerful woman? And two, it's a good example of like, how do you, yeah, exactly. I mean, and then two, like, how do you delegate that work to making sure that you're getting the outcomes that are desired by utilizing certain people's strengths?
Well, and there's also the element here that like, you want to describe it in a way that's not sleazy, right? You're not manipulating people. You're not an orchestrator where everyone else is like cronies. You're not just delegating work. You're strategically helping people do the things they're strong at for the good of the business. So there's just this element of getting to that with people. Your job is to break down silos to unblock not just your team, but all teams. So how do I go? I need to deeply understand what finance needs today because they're stopping my team from discounting. And I need to know why so that I can build discounting training that works for my directors and works for the salespeople on the floor. So I have to go, hey, finance, I'm here to work with you. And I really am. And I'm a consultant to you too. And I have to know how to do that on a regular basis. And I think that's like the secret sauce that when we don't, it's never on a job description, right? But people will be doing all the right things. They'll build an onboarding, they'll have a program, and they're not landing, or they're not getting by, they're not getting teams, right? And they're like, I just don't know what's happening. And it's like that strategic ability to consult with everyone and help align everyone to the greater good is important. And that's why we say executive sponsorship is key. But that executive sponsorship also comes from knowing how to do this at the ground level,
Absolutely.
And I think that's the manager's job more than the director.
100%. I love that. All right. Favorite part of the whole clips here. Interviewing and hiring tips. Where should we go first? I know we talked a lot about like what skill sets are needed. So that kind of goes into your interview side or what you're looking for to hire. Where do we want to go?
I mean, why don't we start with interview tips, since both of us have interviewed, and why don't you start, because you've just done it.
Yeah. Mine was fairly recent. Mine was what, 5-6 weeks ago, I think already. Wow. I think the big thing when you're interviewing is really showcasing how you can strategize and forward think. We talked a lot about this already, but how do you strategize and forward think about how you're actually going to execute on some of the top initiatives that they've already given you, and either the prompts or the questions that they've had, and really taking that step back and understanding the full scope of this. So if I'm talking to like my interview now, I don't have right now anybody underneath me, but if I was to go to that interview and say, hey, I can do X, Y, and Z with all this other headcount, nobody's going to want to take me, because that also means that they have to hire somebody on top of my salary as well too. So understanding like what is the direct initiative that you can do solo, and understanding the scope of the business and your team to allow yourself to provide that clear self-guided expectations, and really selling yourself again to these leaders, getting that executive buy-in, because they're the ones that are ultimately going to hire you, of how and when you can execute these based off of the resources that you're already provided.
For sure. If I say interview tips, because I mean, my interview was so fun at Ada. And I don't know that all interviews were like this. I had quite a few. I interviewed at, I think, seven or 5 companies, and in the end chose the one that I'm at. But some key things that stood out were really, I had to do an assignment, and you always do. So be prepared that you will have to present something. And I'll say that, like, for an interview tip is like, 1, know the job you're applying for. So be curious about that business, that team, and what their major pains are, and major goals are. And make sure you ask that early in the interview process. I would say at a manager level, you should be really challenging your interviewers to think through things for you. So I just remember having a lot of interviews where I was like, okay, what's top line growth look like for you? If I can only do one thing in a quarter, what would it be? How do you currently measure ramp? You want people to increase it. Are you measuring it right now? What systems and tools do you have in place to do that? Oh, you'd like me to build a coaching program? Are you going to put your managers through training? Have you thought about that? In my experience, I'm not sure. And really in my interviews, I was consulting a lot on the problems. And I would say that, like, that becomes really important, because you're showing that you're really excited for the challenge in front of you, and that you're going to stand up for it, right? And that I'm accepting this challenge. I want to know the good, bad, and the ugly, because I want to choose to take that on, because I'm going to really own this thing. The other piece too is not being too high level. So this is a really big pain point that I see even interviewing now, because in some of these roles, I have really senior people interview for me and I have really junior people interview for me, is when someone just stays at this super high level and like misses the mark completely. And it's so unfortunate, because the ability to showcase what you can do is a skill that's kind of essential to this job. And it's unfortunate when people miss that, where I'm like, I actually know you in other, communities, and I know you're wonderful, but like this interview wasn't great. So those presentations, it's like knowing how to really measure the fabric of the culture. Like you want to be able to identify that pretty quickly from the interviews they've already had. You want to ask questions and understand the team and the challenge, and you want to present whatever you're presenting in the scope of like getting buy-in from the people in the room, because that's what you're going to have to do day in and day out. And then also showcasing that your priorities and their priorities are aligned. So that's where it's like, you want to hire this role because you want to see 15% growth year over year. Awesome. I built this project for this company, but I want to show you how I would do that for you, right? And that's what a consultant would do, right? That's how, or a great consultant. Not all consultants are created equal, but that I would say is like, come into that interview like a consultant, but like a consultant knows to stay and do the work.
Yes.
Not the consultant who comes and tells you what's wrong and leaves. The one who's going to stay, see it through, actually finish that project and report back. And so you want to think about it in a longer term way.
I think that's the big thing too when you're interviewing. Like, everybody always forgets the reporting part of like, how do you say that you are going to do, like, what is the definition of good and how do you report on good? So as a manager level, you have to have that because it is a key element, especially in our careers, that we have to report on, am I making an impact? And what does that actually look like as well too? So
For sure.
really
In my
diving into
interview,
that.
actually, this is a
Yeah.
really funny thing. I think it's also important to say that you know that you don't know. So in my interview, I worked for a company where like that just wasn't how we measured things. We measured things
Nope.
in different terminology than the numbers in SaaS that I'm in right now. And so I pointed out in the project that I was like, hey, like these are the things I would have liked to measure, but I actually just have never had the tech stack or the tools or the data resources to do so. And that's what I'm hoping to learn, with this company. And that was okay. Right.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're the first hire and they don't know what RAMP is. And that's all right. But like the real thing you also want to showcase is that you're self-aware of what you don't know and that you have a path on how you're going to learn it. So I was like, I'm new to enablement. I'm not new to training, but I'm going to go find mentors, people, like, trust me, I will figure it out for you.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge
Thankfully,
thing.
they believed me.
I mean, I think I did the same thing.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I mean, and I don't think we need to spend too much time on like hiring because we basically just told you what you're, supposed to be looking for at the same time. Like have those people that are challenging you on the same front.
Yeah.
But also somebody that, again, I really took this to heart, what you said last week, though, hiring for that next level, which I think is huge. But I think for this role specifically is really that forward thinker, that future thinker, not tomorrow, but what does next year, next month, et cetera, look like?
Yeah, I think we do want to give some tips to hiring managers on this though. And maybe it's not like what to look for, but it's how to kind of get to good in your job descriptions or expectations of this role. Because I think some things that I saw in my interviews were people had no idea why they were hiring enablement. It was just trendy and they were like, cool, we want someone. And I was like, okay, why?
I guess,
right.
yeah,
And they're like, you figure it out. And I'm like, no, no, we're not doing that. I know I sound super Canadian when I say that, but it's one of those things where I think when you're a hiring manager for this role, like do what you can to outline someone's impact in their first 6 months to a year, but also take into account how long it takes to build some of those things. So for example, like if you tell someone you want them to build playbooks across your whole organization, well, is your company aligned on a process?
Yeah.
Probably not. If you don't have one, probably not. Is your team hitting quota right now? Okay, maybe you have that. Awesome. Do you have a bunch of new people coming in, or are you having a steady team? Because is onboarding going to become a focus so that playbook doesn't get built? Like just being realistic about how you think through that person's job and setting them up for success. And when you're interviewing, you really want someone who's going to challenge you and point those things out so you can learn. But also you want someone who's going to be honest about what they don't know and demonstrates that self-awareness. And who's a really great culture fit, because enablement is a huge culture carrier. No matter what level of role they are, people look to them because they're always in training, right? And they're always speaking at everything. They're at your RKOs. So you want to really make sure that you're hiring for someone you want your reps and people to be like, or who you're okay if they're like.
Yeah.
Sometimes we forget that, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I think, yeah, making sure that they have that willingness to learn too, I think is the only big thing. Like have that curiosity. If they're not curious about different things, then like I think that's like what drives a lot of the success within enablement is how curious I'd say a lot of us are to really learn more and grow more and really try to dive into those bigger problems too. So,
well, and I think that the step 2 from curiosity is ownership. At this level, I want you to find a problem and solve it.
Be the solution
and you want someone who can function, without a ton of what's it called, guardrails, right?
Yes.
At a manager level, I want to go, here's the problem we think. And you go, and I'd go, okay, I'm going to go diagnose that. I'll be back in 2 weeks with a needs assessment. And actually like, this wasn't your problem, but you want someone who's going to be able to like take that kind of extreme ownership at this level. Otherwise you're going to have a lot of frustration. You're going to have a frustrated, person in this role, your team. And I would say as a hiring manager, really usher in that person as the executive sponsor, introduce them in the company, align with all your directors and managers on what this person does and does not do, shout them out to the team, like make sure that your org knows what this person is here for so that you get the most out of this hire. And they're not spending 3 to 6 weeks getting alignment and buy-in and doing a campaign tour as to like teach everyone what they're actually for, which you see so many times, right?
Yes.
90 days in, I got a meeting with my director. Yes. Like you don't want to waste that kind of time.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I think that's spot on, man. I love this. Ashton, we did it. We got through most of these roles. We have one more session left. Guys, I'm excited. Next week, we have 2 special guests coming in. We already talked about her once, but Whitney Seek's going to be joining us, as well as Enablement Match's founder, David Lickman. He is a huge recruiter in the enablement space and has a lot of these JDs and what this all looks like going into it. So next week, pay attention, coming at you huge. There might be some fried chicken in play because we talked about that at the last one. So pay attention. We might be having that, but stay tuned next week, guys. We're going to be talking about the director versus VP, as well as that future C-suite of that Chief Revenue Enablement Officer. Ashton, any other closing thoughts?
No, this has been such a pleasure and I'm so excited. I'd love to hear people tell us if we didn't do a role justice or what they think, or if they're defined different in their organizations. I want to continue to have a conversation around all of these for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And we can always jump back. I know that we said that this is the last one, but if we want to jump back into one, we're totally right there to go do it.
We might, hey, in a year, I might be completely wrong and I'll be like, we got to re-record this.
We're going to redo the whole series. Awesome. Ashton, thank you so much. And I'm so excited to see you again next week. And we'll chat soon. Thanks, everyone.